Today on For the Record.
I'm excited. I'm glad to see everybody coming out, getting involved in local government.
The youngest mayor in Carnegie's history.
I believe in Carnegie. I think this town has a lot of, potential.
Now he shares his plans for the future.
I'm going to do the work like any other mayor. I'm going to work hard to improve the town, uplift the town.
And what his constituents think about his young age.
They were excited about having a young person running for office.
For the Record starts now. Welcome to For the Record. I'm Michelle Wright, and this week we speak with a man who has made history as the youngest mayor in Carnegie Borough's history. Sam Bigham turned 24 years old just a few days ago and was elected at the age of 23. Photographer J.T. Penderville sharing this video of Bigham swearing in earlier this month. Now, Bigham is sharing his vision for Carnegie, what he brings to the table, and his thoughts about the borough's future. Let's go to my sit down with him now. And right now, we would like to welcome Sam Bigham, newly elected mayor of Carnegie. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
We have so many questions for you because right now you are the youngest mayor to serve in Carnegie's history, and one of the youngest possibly in the state. I know there are little caveats of tiny boroughs that might have some younger people, but in terms of having an administration and all the responsibilities, right now you are the youngest.
Yep, that's what we think, yep.
You just turned 24 years old, so happy birthday. I want to ask you, how do your constituents feel about your age?
Yeah, so when I was going door to door, running for office, and mainly in the May primary, a lot of people of all ages, especially young people, but even older people, they were excited about having a young person running for office, a young person who's experienced, knows the ins and outs of local government. And, people just they want younger people, they want new ideas, innovative ideas. So, people are excited. We had, at my swearing in, we had to bring out the overflow seating. So people are very excited, I think, to have a young person as mayor in Carnegie.
What do you think will differentiate you in terms of what you expect to do in Carnegie because you're so young?
I can put a lot more time and energy towards this. This is going to be, a part-time thing for me as mayor of Carnegie. So I'm going to be working in the office. I'm going to be working closely with the administration and the police department and with the borough council to really try some new things here. I'm also working as the director of the Carnegie Community Development Corporation part-time. So with those two responsibilities, I'm going to be doing a lot of work with the Main Street, the businesses. We're going to be putting on a lot of events in Carnegie to promote the town. We're hopefully going to bring in some investment through these state and county programs and other ways to bring in money to uplift the Main Street. So being able to put that time and energy towards this is one thing, but also being able to think differently and creatively about what we've been doing in the town. Because when I've been talking to people who have been involved for a long time, I just think something, and I like everybody on the council, I think we're going to work well together. What worries me is that sometimes people might get stuck in their ways, or they might not think we can accomplish everything that I think we can accomplish. And I just think it's important to have someone who can really push for these kinds of things,
And this is something that you have been working toward really your whole life, to do something in government, right? You've been really interested. You have a long resume of working with and pitching ideas and cooperating with local leaders. Tell me when you first wanted to work in government in some form.
Yeah, I guess it goes back to high school really, because we get drilled into us what we're going to do for work after we graduate high school, and whether or not we're going to go to college. And I was thinking, private sector, public sector. The public sector is always more appealing because I feel like you really can have a positive impact on people's lives. That the work, to me anyway, is a lot more meaningful. So it was at that point that I decided when I went to college, I studied history and political science. I was involved in different areas of government. I was volunteering as a junior council person for Carnegie. I wanted to intern for different levels of government. I worked for my school newspaper and in local news covering government, among other things. So it's just always something that I've wanted to do, I suppose.
So I have to ask you a question about being in news, and I know you were an editor for the newspaper. How do you think that prepared you for doing this new type of service?
In a lot of ways. So for one thing, as an editor for The Pen, which is IUP's school newspaper, which recently turned 100, I think, last year, I had a team of student journalists that I had to work with. So that involved preparing stories, pitching stories, and working with them to develop their craft as a journalist, helping them to create these stories. So that's on the one thing. But the things that we were covering, obviously we were covering IUP and the IUP administration. But we were covering a lot of their finances, the policies that they were adopting, in addition to, local interest stories, obviously. But, all politics is local, so we were covering local events, IUP's administration. In addition to that, I did work for a local newspaper called the Gazette 2.0, where I was covering school board meetings and Crafton Borough Council meetings, among other, events. So sitting in on those, in addition to sitting in on Carnegie Borough meetings, I think is really, it helps to prepare you about just having the knowledge base of what goes on in
So
government.
you know that we might call you if something is going on, and you're not going to be too annoyed with us because you know how it is
I
on
know
the
how it
other
is,
end.
yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Talk about the location of Carnegie, because I know you've said a lot in the past about how pivotal it is to this region and the location being so good. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of in between the city of Pittsburgh and the Robinson Shopping Center. We're right along 376, so we have a good connection there. We also are connected to the West Busway, which actually ends in Carnegie. So we have a good connection to downtown, which I think is part of the reason why some young transplants have been moving to Carnegie, who I was speaking with, when I was going door to door. So we have that going for us. In addition to, the advantages that Carnegie has, we have a strong Main Street. I think a lot of people, they want to have a Main Street in their communities. They want to be able to walk, not just in their communities, but down in the business district to see these different small businesses that we have. So, we got a good location there.
Still ahead on For the Record.
Really, these past 20 years have been rebuilding from that flood.
From flooding to fires, the challenges Carnegie has faced over the past several decades, and how the new mayor hopes to help the community continue to overcome them. Welcome back to For the Record. Throughout the years, the borough of Carnegie has faced a number of difficult times. That includes the flooding from Hurricane Ivan back in 2004, the devastating and deadly fire at the building that housed Papa J's restaurant back in 2018. And then, late in 2024, the fire that destroyed Riley's Poorhouse. I speak with the new mayor about the continued efforts for Carnegie to overcome these heartbreaking situations. Take a look. You've had some struggles, though, in Carnegie with two fires that hit the businesses there, Riley's Poorhouse, of course, and Papa J's before that. What do you think the biggest challenge is going to be? Can you rebuild that momentum that was destroyed by fire?
I want to add to that. We actually also had a devastating flood in 2004. So really, these past 20 years have been rebuilding from that flood. It was from Hurricane Ivan. It, wrecked the business district. There's maybe, you could probably count on your fingers how many businesses from before the flood are still around in Carnegie.
I covered that flood. I remember it well.
Yeah. So the town is basically transformed from that point. Obviously, we've had fires. Papa J's burned down in 2018, I think. And Riley's Poorhouse burned down last November. So, we're putting all that work into revitalizing Carnegie, and then we get hit with these two fires that really destroyed two, anchor restaurants in our community. Riley's is so important. Not only did I work there in high school, the former mayor, Stacy Riley, also worked there in high school. So it goes to show just how pivotal of a business that was to the community. Riley's is thankfully planning to rebuild, I believe, sometime this year. So we'll be eagerly waiting for them to reopen. But there's always things we can do on top of that. We have events that really do a lot to show off the borough in a positive way. We have a popular farmers market that I want to expand. We have other events that we want to do on the main street to really show off the business district, support our businesses, and show off the town and give people reason to come to Carnegie. So that's the one thing we can do. We can also do more to invest in the main street. So there's ways to fund different programs. The state and the county obviously have programs. Main Street Matters is one that comes to mind. But there's ways to work with other private and public partners to bring money into the main street. One of the things that I definitely want to do is have a facade improvement program, which is what the town used to do. Kind of fell off, so I want to restart that because that's something that business owners have been talking to me about. There's other ways we can help by subsidizing new businesses and current businesses in different ways. So that's how we can restart that momentum.
You're really going to focus on business.
Well, yeah, the Main Street and the Central Business District. I mean, that is it's very important to the town. Obviously, it gives people a reason to move to Carnegie by having a main street that they can come down to, and it's a way to bring visitors and I guess visitors to Carnegie to support our businesses.
Sure, main streets are the identity of the town.
Yep.
One thing I wanted to bring up is something that I saw that you wrote on Facebook recently, and you described about immigration policies as being cruel. Talk a little bit more about that, and are you facing any kind of issues related to immigration in Carnegie?
Well, so in Carnegie, Carnegie has always been a diverse town. I think, 100 years ago, that meant that we had a large African American population, a large Jewish population, a large Catholic population, many of whom were immigrants at the time. And 100 years ago, I'm going to connect this to now, but 100 years ago, the Ku Klux Klan marched into Carnegie specifically because of that. And Carnegie residents, met them with broken off furniture legs and, I guess, for lack of a better phrase, beat them out of town. So Carnegie has always been a diverse town. Nowadays, that means there's a large refugee and immigration population, mainly from the Middle East, Central Asia, Ukraine, and other places. So Carnegie has been and is a diverse town, and we have a lot of immigrant-owned businesses on the main street as well. What I meant by saying, immigration practices under the current administration are cruel is that we have federal law enforcement going after people who, have been living here for a while. They've been working, haven't committed a crime other than not being authorized to be here, I suppose. And now we have federal law enforcement, detaining them on the street, capturing them, attacking Americans, protesting it. Recently, an American was shot and killed by an officer in Minneapolis. And now we're deporting people, who the government is claiming to be gang members when there's reason to believe they're not gang members. It's just, I would just like to see people getting their due process. And there's people who are going through the legal pathway to citizenship, and they're getting picked up as they're leaving immigration court. I mean, I don't know how anyone could think that's fair. So that's what I meant when I said that was cruel.
Are you going to develop any kind of policy, or how do you plan to handle it in Carnegie now?
Well, I've had a conversation with the chief of police. We won't do anything more than is legally required for us to do.
You mean in cooperation with ICE? Is that what you mean?
I mean, we're not, the Carnegie Police Department is not going to assist ICE in their enforcement, is what I mean.
And how did the conversation between you and the chief of police go when this came up?
It went well. We had a lot of agreement, and I'm looking forward to working with him. I think we already have a good relationship, so we're going to work well together.
And finally, on the same topic, have the residents reached out to you about this topic? And do you have any immigrants in Carnegie that are worried about the future?
We do have a lot of immigrants in Carnegie, and it is worrying. Thankfully, we haven't really been the target of ICE at the moment, but other places in the region have been. So, we're going to deal with that when it happens, I guess.
Still ahead.
We're just going to have to work very hard to support them, make sure we've got events and give people reason to come to Carnegie.
More on this young mayor's vision for the future of the borough of Carnegie. Welcome back to For the Record. As I continue my conversation with Sam Bigham, the new mayor of Carnegie, who happens to be the youngest in the borough's history, I ask more about some of the issues he's focused on and his initial plans as he begins his term in office. Let's talk about the Climate Action Plan, because I know a while ago you had some input on the borough's Climate Action Plan. What is that?
Yeah, so the Climate Action Plan, this was created, I believe, you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, in 2022, so I assisted with that. This was part of, under the previous administration, this real push to get to net zero. So the plan just involves ways for the borough to reduce our emissions, not just on the government side, but also on the residential side. So it includes information about helping residents with knowledge on how to weatherize their homes, ways to have solar panels built on their property at a way that's affordable, ways for us to electrify our vehicles. Unfortunately, a lot of that may have been made obsolete by changes under the current administration, but it also includes a lot of risk assessments to the borough. So one of the major ones that we might see in the future is flooding. As you know, Carnegie was hit with a devastating flood over 20 years ago. Chartiers Creek, there's been a lot of work done on that creek to prevent flooding, but you know, we have Campbell's Run, which consistently has flooding issues. And as storms get worse, flooding is going to get worse, and is going to be a challenge for Carnegie.
Sounds like you're very well versed on the challenges ahead. What do you think is going to be the most difficult for you?
When it comes to supporting our businesses, we're going to be facing the same challenges that a lot of other small main streets are going to face, which is things are less affordable, people have less disposable income. And that means they're going to be able to spend less on recreational things, which would mean a lot of our Main Street businesses. So we're just going to have to work very hard to support them, make sure we've got events and give people a reason to come to Carnegie.
What are you most looking forward to?
Well, I guess our events. This past year I planned the Farmers Market and the Carnegie Crawl. The Farmers Market is self-explanatory, but I think what's different about our Farmers Market is we do it on the Main Street. So a lot of markets are in a park or in an area like that, but we do it on 2 blocks on the Main Street. So we have vendors fill up the street. It's on a Sunday morning. And the reason we do that is that puts people on the Main Street. They also tend to support our other businesses in the area. So I definitely want to continue that and expand it. The crawl is once a month on a Friday in the afternoon and evening. That is more of like a street fair, I guess. You know, we have live music. Businesses stay open later. Everyone tries to do something different for it. So I think the events is what I would be excited about, doing more of them, expanding them, all that.
We do have a brand new airport terminal that's getting a lot of attention. A lot of people are going to be coming in and out of that, driving straight through the Carnegie exit there, getting to downtown for the NFL draft. Do you have any plans, or have you thought at all about how you're going to handle the draft and all the people coming for that?
Well, we are working on that specifically with the draft. Carnegie, interestingly, we do have some sports legends. Honus Wagner is from Carnegie. It's not football, but maybe there's some overlap there. Bill Cowher, former coach of the Steelers, went to Carleton High School, which not from Carnegie, but Carnegie's part of the same school district. So it just goes back to what I was saying about promoting the town, making sure people know what goes on in Carnegie so they have a reason to come down in regards to the influx of visitors.
We're all going to have our hands full when that draft happens.
Oh, yeah.
And coming up on For the Record, a final thought from the new mayor of Carnegie. Welcome back to For the Record. Before we go, I ask my final questions to the man who is now the youngest mayor in Carnegie Borough's history. Take a listen to what he has to say. Now, I asked you how your constituents felt about your age. I'm curious how you feel about it. What do you think you can bring to the area being quite young?
Well, positive attention for one thing. I think it's exciting to have a young person. A lot of people would say it's exciting to have a young person. I'm going to do the work like any other mayor. I'm going to work hard to improve the town, uplift the town, regardless of my age. I think I have the experience to be able to do that. But going back to the point I made earlier, it's just important to have younger people involved so I can provide that kind of perspective to council meetings and the administration.
Finally, I want to ask you about any future plans. So you've just been elected to this office, but you have a long life and career ahead of you. Do you have any other plans to continue running for office?
I don't know yet. I mean, we'll see how. I'm definitely going to finish graduate school at CMU. That's the big thing on my plate right now. I'm going to fulfill the 4 years that I ran for as Carnegie mayor. And then we'll see what happens, But right now I'm focused on Carnegie.
We'll be watching closely to see what happens. And remember, if you have a For the Record topic you'd like us to address, send us an email to news@WTAE.com. You can also rewatch this episode or any episode with the Very Local app on your smartphone, tablet, or smart TV. Thank you for joining us. Have a good week. We'll see you next Sunday morning at 11 a.m.